What's up, AND Camp? This is Justin Gibney, president of the AND Campaign, and this is another civic update. We are trying to raise civic literacy among Christians so that as we engage in the public square, we can do so in a more informed and effective manner. Today, I want to talk a little bit about the riots that were going on in France. Now, for whatever reason, it took a while for this to become headline news, but for the past few weeks, France has experienced the worst riots that they've had in Paris for decades. It's been a big deal. Folks have been setting fire to cars, they've been looting, and folks have even died in these riots. At one point, there were over 200,000 people participating in the riots. Now in America, if we have 25 to 50 people participating in a riot for a day or so, or for a couple hours, it becomes a big deal. Can you imagine 200,000 people rioting and protesting for weeks? That's a serious business. The riot started apparently on November 17th as a response to the French government's plan to raise taxes on gasoline and diesel fuel. They had already raised taxes at the beginning of 2018. They had put a 7.6 cent tax on diesel fuel. Most of the people in France, as I understand it, use diesel fuel, which brought the amount of tax on fuel to 59%. So when people were buying their gas, 59% of what they were paying was taxes. And this was one of the highest taxes in the European Union. You know that the European Union is already highly taxed. And so people were paying $6 a gallon for gas. $6. Now, what you need to know is this is all connected to an effort to slow down climate change. The idea is that by having taxes be so high on fuel, you're discouraging people from driving cars. And so the French government was using these taxes to discourage people from driving cars and say, hey, use public transit or some other option because we really need emissions to go down. Now, for those of you who have been following the AND campaign for a while, you know that we are supportive of creation care. We think that we need to be deliberate about how we steward the land and that we need to be thoughtful and deliberate or careful about how we treat the earth. That's something that we believe Christians should do. And there should be policies to guide us in that regard. That said, one thing we have to keep in mind is that with any major policy, there's always a tension or a give and take, a risk, or even a unintended consequence, right? Big policies always come for that. They're not always easy answers. So what happened in this case is that the people who are being called yellow vests, these are the rioters, because what they did is they put on yellow vests for visibility, which was really smart. These people began rioting because they're people who live outside of the city, right? And so they were going broke just trying to get to work. They were going broke just trying to take care of their family to get from point A to point B. And so they're like, look, something needs to happen. I think they started off, when they heard about this new policy that was trying to be implemented, they started off by saying, okay, let's sign a petition. And up until this point, I think almost 1.2 million people have signed the petition to say to take this out of the budget. Well, the problem with that was that President Macron and the French government pretty much ignored the petition. And so they were going to move forward with this policy anyway. So folks got fed up and they took to the streets. They've been on the streets since November 17th, making their voices heard because this was such a serious issue for them. And it's really hurt President Macron's favorability. People are coming to him and saying, you only care about cosmopolitan people. You only care about people in the city because your policy did not consider people outside of the city at all. And they have somewhat of a case for that. And so I think the lesson that we learn here is that it is very important to identify serious issues and address them. Climate change is a serious issue. It needs to be addressed. But just because you identify a serious issue, it doesn't mean that you can implement the most aggressive policy possible, or a very aggressive policy, because there are always other considerations. And so in this case, you go forward with this very aggressive climate control policy, which is trying to get people off the streets, trying to make it so people can't drive their cars. But then you don't have the infrastructure, the transportation infrastructure, to make sure that they can still get to work, to make sure that they can still get their family to point A and point B. Yes, you have infrastructure inside of the city, but if you don't have infrastructure for people in rural places or people who are in the suburbs, that became very problematic. And the reason that I bring this up is because the United States is going to have to make some of the same decisions. These issues are going to have to be addressed, but how are we going to address it? I can tell you one wrong direction to go into, and I think we saw that in the 2016 presidential campaign when you had Secretary of State Hillary Clinton came out and said, hey, we're going to put a lot of miners and mines out of business and out of work. That was the response. A very callous response. And to me, that was a gaffe-ridden election on both sides, but one of the most callous things that we heard from that side of the aisle. Because even if these policies need to change, and even if we need to move towards clean energy, do you really say that we're just going to get rid of all these people's jobs and not have any transition plan for them, not give them any hope that there's another industry on the way? These are thousands and thousands of families. And so it's just not the right way to handle it. Are we going to be deliberate and thoughtful about how we handle this issue moving forward? We can't just care. And here's some of the problem that I see. You have a lot of cosmopolitan people, a lot of people that live in cities, when they talk about this issue, aren't considering other people and their jobs and their lives and things of that nature. We have to address it. Can we do it in a way that takes everybody in consideration and finds the best thing that we can do? And here's why it's so important that we not think about policy just as our side winning. Because when you think of policy as just your side winning, your side could have identified the right problem and still have a terrible policy for that problem. But what we do is say, hey, it's a problem. My side wants to address it. I just hope that we win. But that doesn't mean that people win. And so we talk a lot about it's good that you're in a political party. We don't have a problem with that. But your loyalty should be to good policy. You can't just be a feather duster and just look at the surface and just look at the name of the bill. You need to look at how it's affecting other people. How are we going to deal with this? How can we do a better job? So I hope we find better ways to deal with this. We don't want to see the United States in a similar situation as we see France, but it's something that we should all be thinking about. If you like this type of information and want to get more of it, you can always listen to myself and Michael Ware on the Church Politics Podcast, where we address several issues every week. We're taking a break right now during Christmas. My friend Michael just had his first child, and so we're taking a short break. But Church Politics Podcast will be back soon. Thank you for joining me in this civic update. And remember, don't just complain. Be informed and faithful for action. See you next time.